Hey guys, it's M. And today, we're going to be talking about Rei Gaiden, the most controversial Gaiden that's been published. No matter where you go in this story, some people say it's good and maybe even the best, and others will just say it's straight up gutter trash. I remember reading it before I started doing YouTube again and thinking it was okay, but the more people started mentioning certain, events in this story I noticed I forgot about, I called my old opinion into question. And for that and the fact that Rei Gaiden characters just got added into HNK Legends
about 3 months ago when I wrote the script before everything ended up breaking,
I wanted to go over Rei Gaiden today and see what I think about it now. Just as a quick disclaimer, unlike the Garuda Gaiden video, I'm gonna be heavily summarizing a lot of parts of this story to keep this video relatively short. As unlike Garuda Gaiden, this book's got quite a bit of length to it, so it wouldn't make sense to cover literally everything that happens in this book the way I did in Garuda's story. Also, I'm gonna have to censor a lot of parts in this book to keep YouTube happy because, as I stated earlier, this book's got a lot of moments in it. With that out of the way, let's get into the most controversial Gaiden in HNK. So our story starts off with Rei thinking back to how he lost Ari at her wedding, along with possibly one of the best Jaggy drawings we've ever seen. And when he promises to get revenge, we then cut to the present where Rei's traveling with a bunch of slave traders to sell off some women.
What?
No, alright. I know that sounds bad.
Let me specify. This book's set before the events of HNK 1, so he's still in his whole angsty phase about the losing his whole sister thing. And he's doing some less than admirable actions at the start of this book. The kind of things that you would believe early Rei would be doing. Rei's traveling with these slave traders because he knows there's a chance he'll run into whoever has a sister by traveling with them. He says he'll protect their lives until they reach the town they're gonna sell the slaves at. When they reach, the buyer starts some problems, and when Rei's called in, he betrays the slavers he was traveling with and says he only serves the strong. After that's all dealt with, he asks the buyer if he knows where his sister is. After name dropping Rei's next destination, Asgard, he says something about Ari and Rei insta-kills him for it. Then he says he won't give up faith in finding Ari before heading back out into the wasteland. If you're wondering what happened to all those slaves or if Rei helped them, nah, he just left them where they are. This is still angsty Rei, so he just leaves them in the middle of his angsty Linkin Park speech. Some bandits stumble into Rei and his looks alone scare them off. They drive away on their motorbike while Rei runs after them on foot, Roberta style. And while they're driving, they see some random woman in the desert, so they try to snag her, but surprise, it's a little dude with a crossbow. So after the bandits are dealt with and the little dude stating that the loot's theirs, they threaten Rei by saying they know Nanto. They talk for a bit with the little dude saying his name's Yu and that he's also headed to Asgard. So after Rei threatening a literal child, Yu says he'll take him there and begins explaining Asgard is like a prison for women and it's a bad place. We then get a little traveling montage of them heading to the city. So as you can guess, Yu's gonna be our discount bat for this story. As for the story itself, other than Rei angsting, it's a little bit dry at the start, but I assure you it's gonna start picking up. If that's a good or a bad thing, you'll find out for yourself real soon. So Yu and Rei reach the city, and Yu states it's the red light district of bloodshed, with its reputation meant to exceed Cassandra's. Which, because from what we saw of Cassandra, I don't know if I believe that, and from what you're about to see, I don't know if you'll believe it either. Anyways, Yu warns Rei how dangerous the city is, and then they both get inside and... well, I guess he did say it's the red light city, so this does make sense. So after I almost called Chris Hansen on these two girls, Yu blurts out they're here to sell their skills. For some reason, because it kind of doesn't make sense in this context, but whatever. The goon squad rolls up and challenges Rei, and as he asks if they've seen his sister, they make some rather tasteless remarks. Just gonna pause the recap here and state in this book, it 100% sucks to be a woman. I can't really get into it yet, but there's a few good reasons I mentally call this Rei do of a healer. So back to the story. Before Rei can fight all these guys, a bunch of women known as Eva's Valkyries break up the fight, with their leader Frida asking if they can buy Rei's skills and also stating that they work for Queen Eva, the ruler of Asgard. Frida says she'll guide Rei around the city. She starts expositioning and they end up in a bar. They then start negotiating about buying his skills and Rei simps asking for girls as payment. Frida says he can have anyone, or even her, which kinda weird for basically the Queen's Royal Guard to be offering Punani on the first time she's meeting Rei, or anybody to be honest, but whatever. But Rei wants that high tier and he wants the queen. While they're talking, she strolls up and pretty much says, yeah, we can bang. She pretty much says she banged a few of the Nanto stars, and then after a very, I could tell this story was written by a guy line, I didn't expect any of this when I opened this book. So after Rei pretty much gets a post-nut nap, he finds out Eva's been murdered. Yes, this character really did only exist to drop some spiritual lines and then die. But regardless, Ray's trying to understand why Eva's dead, as he doesn't remember killing her at the end of their fun time session. The Valkyries eventually arrive, which I really don't understand because that's implying that they left the door unlocked, seeing as they didn't kick it down, which is kind of weird in itself that someone can just have sex with the queen and the door would be unlocked. But, you know, whatever, let's keep going. And they get mad at Ray, who just stood there like a doofus until they arrived, I guess. And his only defense is, it wasn't me. The Valkyries attack him, and Ray rips their clothes off. Honest to God, us HNK fans are lucky this manga isn't well known. Scenes like this would have gotten us splattered on Twitter. So anyways, the naked Valkyries attempt to scuffle with him. I'd show you the scene, but I honestly don't trust YouTube to not screw me over. Until he jumps out of a window and goes into hiding. A manga where the main character does a heinous crime to a female queen involving specs that leads to them hopping out of a window and sneaking around the kingdom? Sounds kind of familiar, but I'm not sure why. So anyways, the Valkyrie's wound on Ray makes him pass out, and then we get a flashback to his youth and his training, while his little fangirl watches. What's her name? She's so irrelevant to this story, I forgot she existed, so honestly, you don't really need to know. When he finishes standing on spikes, young Yuta appears. She was there too, I guess. And of course, since it's Yuta, they almost fight, but Ray's current master Rufu and his wife Rinri show up to break up the fight. Since I'm trying to keep these flashback sections short, Rufu says Ray needs more training and orders him to stand over the Cliff of Darkness. What's the Cliff of Darkness, you may be asking? Ray stands over a cliff, and it's dark. He has to stand there for 10 days. Yuta tries to get Amoeba to hurt Ray. Ray falls and Rinri saves him. She basically says you have to learn the two halves of Nanto. Basically like the hard and soft fists of Hokuto. She teaches him her soft style. Ray goes back to complete his dark cliff training. Amoeba jumps him and gets ultra instinctive. Ray finishes his trial and presses Rinri and Rufu. And Yuta has a quarter-life crisis. After all that, Ray wakes up to a mysterious woman, which is revealed to be you on the literal next page. So I'm not sure what the point of the one-page cliffhanger was, but whatever. Ray tells you what's going on and that he killed Eva. While they're discussing leaving, these guys show up and slap you. Ray bodies these invaders and their boss seems to get cocky. Ray reveals the mysterious man's face and it's... This guy's apparently some random dude trained in another Nanto style. He was never shown before now, so I think it's a bit weird they chose to reveal him like this, but it's whatever. They fight for a bit before Zahn, this OC's name, says that they should join sides and reveals that he's with the masked guys that we've been seeing so far. Ray agrees, seeing as the Valkyries don't like him very much at the moment, and Zahn takes him to his hideout in town. There the masked soldiers say they're going to be raiding tonight and do unspeakable words that can't be said here to the women. They start their assault with Ray joining them as he really doesn't have anywhere else to go at the moment. The Valkyries appear to stop the raiders, and after dropping her in-game line, her and Ray fight. Well, fight would be a strong word since it ends in like 2 panels, but Ray wins, knocks out Frida and all of the Valkyries at about the same time. Which really makes me wonder why they guard the queen, cause they kinda suck. I don't know, it's just the fact that the HNK verse is known for having martial artists literally everywhere, even sometimes when it doesn't make sense. Even the bad guys have a martial artist on their team. It's kind of funny how Eva found a group of people to defend her who have no abilities at all. But it's whatever. And then we get more uncomfortable dialogue. Look, I was gonna wait to the end of the review to say it, but it comes up so much I feel like I have to address it. I'm not offended by this, but I feel like if you're gonna throw this kind of subject around, you can't throw it around willy-nilly, and it needs purpose. Literally every single dude character except Ray has talked about graping women. They don't have any particular reason to want to do that. They're just all creeps. I'm aware in Base Fist of the North Star they had characters say they were gonna have fun with women, but it was never shoved in your face this much and to this degree. If they wanted to murder them for some sort of disrespect, saying this is our town, and literally do nothing else to them, nothing would have changed about this story. It's parts like this that heavily drag down this story, and I think is the reason many people hate it. The writer seems like a nice guy from that message he left at the end of the last HNK event, but all the villains are written like angsty incels. I can dislike someone for reasons other than them violating women. He could have thought of literally any other way for you to dislike an antagonist in this story, but anyways, let's just get back to the recap. Frida almost gets raped on screen, but then a mysterious man saves her. After Ray's victory, we see him briefly in a bar before he decides to go somewhere we aren't fully aware of yet. Frida wakes up and sees she's still in a cell. The Valkyries manage to jimmy the lock, but after they get out, they run into Ray, and after a brief attack attempt from Frida, he puts her down. Again. God, she's trash. Anyways, the Valkyries are told Rei pretended to join the bad guys, and after some explaining, they're all on the same page. Shin gets word of all that's happening in Asgard in a picture I can't fully show you, and prepares to send his army to take the city, but Amoeba tries to instigate they can't, and while all that's happening, Rei begins thinking about who it could be, and he believes it's his old master Rufu. We cut to Rei helping some random lady that's being harassed by some guys, and when the lady looks over at Yu, she calls her Lady Yu. So it turns out Yu was actually Queen Eva's adopted little sister this whole time, which I think is kind of a stupid plot twist, to be honest. There's only one panel where we see Yu react to Lady Eva's death, and then she never seems affected by it ever again, even though it's her sister who saved her from like being homeless, as we're about to see really soon. And along with that, it brings into question why none of the Valkyries, Eva's personal guard, know what her sister looks like or know what she sounds like at all. I just think it's a bit of bad writing. We then get some admittedly sad panels where we find out how Yu and Eva originally met. Yu then runs away and is in her thoughts until she's knocked out of them when she sees the Valkyries are about to get publicly executed. So after some more incel energy, Rei appears, and before fighting Zahn, he has to fight tall military man. Apparently this guy somehow has a body count comparable to Devil's Rebirth, which I don't believe at all, because this is literally just a dude with a bag, and Devil's Rebirth was a whole ass creature. But after his gimmick gets revealed, which is that the big guy is being mind controlled by the little guy, and he puts people in nets and hits you with them, yes, that's literally his only power. He doesn't know any martial arts. Apparently Bagman over here is Mr. Mass Murderer. But Yu runs out of nowhere and grabs the bell mind controlling the big guy, and Rei immediately one-shots both of them. I'm sorry, I know this is small, but this was a dumb villain. Rei has Nanto. Why couldn't Rei one-tap him before? I fail to believe Rei couldn't cut this dude into pieces before he swings. But enough of the logic, let's move on to the next fight. Rei looks over at Zahn and prepares to rumble. Rei easily overpowers Zahn and humiliates him. And before he can finish him off, the character who saved Frida before is properly introduced. Rima here begins introducing himself to Rei. And while they're talking, Yuta's army arrives outside, but Rima still wants to fight Rei. So while Rima's female friend here helps prepare everyone to fight off the Nanto army, Rima and Rei got to trade blows. After some cool panels and us being told Rima was made in some sort of lab somewhere, they're interrupted by Rei's master armor tightening through the wall. He mocks Rima and confirms that he killed Eva. They all then turn their attention to Yuta, who wasn't really part of Rufu's plan. So Rufu here near instantly wipes out a huge chunk of Yuta's army. If you're thinking, wow, this guy looks like a Nanto Kaio, that's the same vibe I got too. I like Rufu as our main villain, but it's really just because he's dollar store Kaio, and he's just riding off of normal Kaio's coolness. Anyway, this is where the book starts to feel really bloated. To be honest, both Rei and Rufu are right here. Their final fight could have been right here, and I know we'd missed some of that sick original Rei Gaiden lore, but meh. And it's really bad I'm starting to feel this right now because there's like 20 or so more chapters left, somehow. So like every anime villain's first encounter, Rei gets immediately one-shot shafted. Rufu spares him because he's too weak to kill, and then he just kinda fucks off. We get the scene where the main characters begin talking about how big and scary the villain is. Then the main Nanto stars and this guy discuss what they should do and decide, we could just let Rei handle it. We get some conversations about you becoming queen, along with arranging a celebration for Eva's legacy, but as they're doing that, Rufu just sits on his chair and prepares to crash it. What, you thought I was joking when I said he fucked off? No, he literally could have bodied every single person in town if he wanted to when he beat Rei, but I guess he just wasn't feeling it that day. The celebration starts, but Rufu's boys invade, but what's this? It was a trap? Man, who could have thought a celebration held right after the town almost got destroyed would be a trap? Anyways, the Valkyries begin killing Rufu's forces until the big man himself appears. He even stole Kaio's horse. But anyways, Rufu toasts her as expected, and before Rufu kills her, she's saved by Rima. If you're wondering why he showed up again, he's apparently one of Eva's Valkyries, and Frida is a beast person just like Rima. Rei kills Zahn. Yeah, he showed up again, but he felt so irrelevant I didn't bother mentioning him. And Frida roasts Rufu. But she still gets shit on until Rima joins her, and then we're told that united, they may just... Well, they did say may. At least Rima got a good shot in. Anyways, Rufu seems to take the city, with no retaliation from anyone else, because we literally don't see him fight Rei or anybody after Frida and Rima lose, and ends up having a conversation with you before he marries her? I'm not entirely sure what's meant to be conveyed in this scene, but it doesn't really look great no matter how you want to interpret it. Yu calls Rufu an incel and Rei comes back again, for the third time. Luckily we're at the end of the book this time, so you know he's gonna win, but I like that Rufu just keeps not killing people, when he definitely should've, since, you know, he wanted to conquer everything. Like, why did Rufu just go, oh well, see y'all later, and leave again? Why do y'all keep letting this man just leave? Rei didn't even fight him the second time. But it's whatever. We get anime scene 207, where everyone begins hyping up the main character before they fight the big bad man. We see everyone set up for Rei and Rufu's fight in this pit, with all the Nanto stars showing up and even Rao appearing to watch. Wait, how is the Nanto general here if Fury is still with Shin? I'm gonna give the writer an excuse in saying that's just someone pretending to be her, but it's a bit odd they didn't just put Rihaku here so I wouldn't even have to think about that. Back on topic, Rei finally arrives and our final battle begins. As for the fight itself, it's pretty okay. The only problem here is that it has agnologia syndrome. Rufu here literally one-shot Rei 3 days prior. Now all of a sudden we're supposed to believe he can even stand a chance against him. I don't believe he just suddenly got tough enough or fast enough without training to even pretend to fight Nanto Kaio here, but whatever. He goes right into getting mad, and Angry Rei does this. Keep in mind this is meant to be pre-HNK1 introduction Rei doing all this crazy OP looking shit. But while Rei's acting wild and unable to get any hits in, Yu jumps down and almost gets killed, which brings Rei back to his senses. So in short, Rei learns Rinri's Ultra Instinct and does a Water Bird Spirit Bomb? Despite how cool it looks in that panel, it's just the thing he does to Yuta in the show. Either way, it hits Rufu and Rufu ends up dying, and the next day, Rei prepares to leave, but not before cutting up Yu's clothes. It then cuts to Rei's first appearance that we see in HNK1, and then the manga ends. Okay, well, that happened. While I dabbled in my thoughts here and there in the review, I feel like I got a few more things to say about this book. It's a lot worse than I remember. I'm not gonna exaggerate and go, oh, it's the worst thing I've ever read in my life, like a lot of people seem to say, but it definitely has issues that I blanked out before. Mostly just how many times that rape is mentioned or implied. As I said earlier, it's just thrown around. They focus on it too hard when it really didn't need to be involved in the story at all. I guess the end of the world and all, so I'm not saying I don't get it for a group of post-apocalyptic villains to do that kind of thing, but it doesn't need to be hammered over and over again that that's what's gonna happen, and it drags the story down. And keep in mind, I cut out a lot of instances where it's mentioned. Second, this book is long. It's entirely too long for its own good. While I don't like Garuda Gaiden, at least it was short. A lot of this story past chapter 20 felt bloated. Like, if you crammed the final Rufu fight into his first appearance and still made him fight everybody else in the town that he fought in the other two fights, I don't think you'd miss much. I think there's nuggets of a good story in here, but it feels failed in execution because of its length. Like I said, Rima and Frida are cool in concept. Rei helping an all-female city could have been cool, as we saw the lack of respect he seemingly had for them in HNK1. And seeing him defeat his corrupted, stronger master for succession could have made a good story, but it's fumbled by just how much fat was in it. And what would we have really missed? Some sick Rima Frida lore? But who cares? Back to main complaints. Third is, I guess I have to solely base this off of Jaggy Gaiden now. The thing with Gaidens is, given that they're prequels, it gives you a solid chance to explain why certain characters acted certain ways when we get to the main story, which I do think is pretty cool, but Rei Gaiden doesn't really do that. You'd think after working with all these female characters, Rei wouldn't be so damn creepy at the start of HNK1. You'd probably also think he'd be way stronger than he was in the main story if you just read this Gaiden, since it's apparently placed before Ken even kills Shin, but no. If anything, he feels somehow weaker in the show than he does here. There's no takeaways to his character because other than the cross-dressing thing he does one time in the show, it feels like across this whole journey, he hardly changes, making it feel somewhat pointless. I remember before I mentioned in the Garu Gaiden video that out of the 3 Gaidens I've read, those being Rei, Garuda, and Jaggy Gaiden, that both Rei and Jaggy Gaiden were 5s while I gave Garuda Gaiden a 4. That was wrong, and I'm happy a certain person argued with me so I had time to think about how I feel about these 2 books, as they thought Garuda Gaiden was better. I think both Rei and Garuda Gaiden are bad for different reasons. I can understand why people hate Rei Gaiden. As I said, the grapey undertones time and time again can turn people off instantly, but trying to not have that be the whole reason I hate it, even other than everything else I said, this book is just boring. Garu Gaiden just felt like they wanted an OC to be cool. It had a lot of tropes and stuff in it, and the main character was just shafting the opposition. It was annoying just because of the stuff I know about HNK, and knowing that that things shouldn't have been going the way they were in that book, but it was at least short and to the point. To specify, I'm not saying Garuda Gaiden's a 5 or above, but if someone had to sit here and pick apart this whole Rei Gaiden book, edit the script, and make a video on both of these, I would give Garuda Gaiden a 4 and then give Rei Gaiden a 3. In my opinion, this book is not good at all. It could have been very good. There's a bunch of original characters and places to see, but it just wasn't handled well at all. There's another Gaiden story with a bunch of OCs that's great, and this isn't it. They fumbled way too much story for me to say it's good. I would never reread this manga. Not even for a haha it's bad or a funny panel or two. I don't find it worth the time and effort of reading. I can somewhat understand why people like it as they latch onto those good nuggets about it, but I don't personally think they justify the whole experience. With that out of the way, I've said my piece. I want to know what you guys think. Like I said, I know Rei Gaiden's the most controversial Gaiden out there, so I wouldn't be surprised if people had different opinions and takeaways than what I reached with this, so I'd love to hear your thoughts. And with that, I've been M, and I am out.